Hi, so welcome to another episode of Do Resources Talks Early Childhood. It's starting to feel a little bit more normal since this is like, I don't know, like maybe our fifth or something like that. So I'm so incredibly excited today to have Ann Pelo with me. She was here in Nova Scotia to be the main speaker at the Nova Scotia Child Care Association Pedagogical Leadership Conference. And I sort of, jumped on that and said, could we have a conversation? So in case anybody out there doesn't know how awesome she is or who she is, I did make just a couple notes. So she's a teacher, an educator, a program consultant, an author of 5 books. Her primary work focus is on reflective pedagogical practice. She also is involved with social justice and ecological teaching, learning, teacher mentoring, etc. She worked at the famous Hilltop Children's Center as a teacher and teacher mentor in Seattle for 16 years. She currently works with ECEs throughout North America and in Australia and New Zealand, thinking with them about inquiry-based teaching and learning and pedagogical leadership. So again, let's just mention the books, because if people don't have them, they should have them. So that's not fair. I have the language of art. I do not have the goodness of rain, but I need to get the goodness of rain. Rethinking early childhood education. Also, there's season by season, the year unfolds. And then what's the title of the new one?
It doesn't have a title yet.
The mysterious new one that is in the works. So thank you so much, Ann. I'm excited to talk to you. I've really enjoyed, yesterday there was the administrator's session, and then today you had a lot of us thinking really hard. And so sometimes you go to conferences and workshops where you have fun, but you almost think more during the networking and chatting with colleagues, because maybe you just sort of more skimmed the surface in the sessions. So, but you made us work really hard, and that's good. You should go like that, because there was a lot of brain power going on, and some really great dialogue, and that when people were sort of disagreeing with each other, but they were really prodding each other to think deeper and deeper. So thank you for that. One of the things that really spoke to me very powerfully is, for myself, I have always loved the fact that this profession, my profession, our profession, is multidisciplinary, multifaceted, and anytime people have suggested that we look to teachers, to school teachers, to educators, as the way we should perceive ourselves and, market ourselves, it has always not sat well with me, because just as you mentioned, then we're not taking the caring element into account. So it is so important that we're not just educators, we are all of those other things. I mean, sometimes, not that we're trained to be social workers, but sometimes we counsel families, sometimes we are sort of nutritionists, guides, all of those things, and obviously with the primary caring as a big part. So I missed the beginning of it, but something you said along the lines of, so I was enthralled with the statement that instructors deliver content knowledge and academic skill, and you had talked about how we're a far cry from being an instructor. So I missed pieces of that as I was frantically writing. So could you maybe talk a bit about that?
Yeah, thanks. I think you're so spot on to have that no kind of response to the notion that we are educators, just as educators of 5th graders and high school kids are educators, that we have this very unique and particular role that we play in children's lives, and that it involves, as you say, this warm embrace with our arms around children, our arms around families, and their arms around us, that there's this deeply relational work that we're doing. And it's at a unique time of life that our work is focused on, that is not about learning content knowledge. It's not about us developing our skill at coaching children in the ways of literacy and numeracy and how many colors can you identify, doing all this this pouring information in, that what we need to be about is thinking really carefully about what has the children's attention and seeing our work as people who are making meaning of the play children are engaged in, making meaning of the conversations they're having, and then offering responses that honor what children are thinking about, what they're in what it is they're pursuing in their play. You know, we have that way of almost dismissing children's wisdom and insightfulness by, you know, they say the darndest things, or aren't they just so cute? And I think that speaks to the ways in which we're charmed by children, the ways in which we're moved by them. But if we open our hearts all the way to what they're saying, then what we really are is provoked by them into some new ways of seeing the world. And we can step into those, into the thinking they invite us into, if we let go of this rigid, narrow definition of our work as instructors or as, you know, technicians, trying to lead the children to some revelation of a knowledge that we've already determined they should hold.
Mm-hmm.
But set that aside and think with the children about what they're thinking about, and think about how they're thinking about it. That can be our work.
Yes, definitely. It just seems so disrespectful to jump the gun and think that this is what that child's interested in, or this is what, if you haven't spent the time and invested the time to really, I mean, I know for myself a couple years ago when I took a course in emergent curriculum, the difference between some other people taking the course, leaping to, like, there were these, I don't know, it's a random example, but children jumping out of a toy, like not a toy rowboat, a real rowboat that was in the playground. And they were so enraptured with this rowboat. And so this other educator had just been, as I, you know, for lack of a better term, thinking in more of a surface kind of way, she started bringing in life jackets and fishing nets and all kinds of things. And the kids had no interest in any of that. But this particular playground had really nowhere for them to jump. It was really about jumping. And she was, you know, it was becoming very obstructive for what the children wanted to do, because, and she was looking disappointed and sad, and it was just so, you know, she really thought she was being there for the kids, but it's sort of one of the things I always say is that, you know, that you have your own experiential filter, and you're putting everything through that when you need to be aware that you're helping to construct their experiential filter. And so you always have to focus on that rather than where can I get life jackets?
Right.
So she was trying to be there. She really was. But, you know, we're all on a path. We're all on an evolution.
Right. And it's hard to do. We have that instinct to want to be of service to what the children are playing about or thinking about. To want to be in service to what we think they're trying to learn. Because that's, you know, part of that narrow definition of our work as educators. We should educate. And so if they're playing about being in a boat, then we want to give them all this boat stuff so then they learn about boats. And boy, that tethers our thinking and our practice to, as you say, the most superficial way of engaging with the children.
Yeah.
Instead of really giving over to our own curiosity about what it is at the heart of what children are playing about, and getting curious about that in a way that both allows us to respond more deeply to their play, but also to become better thinkers about children, and to not, you know, fling props and lessons and stories and children's books, is fling all this stuff at children, which, as you say, sort of fills the space.
Yes.
And instead, how do we clear the space and just keep clearing, opening, expanding the space in which they're doing the thinking that they're already engaged with?
It just inundates, you know, their environment when they're so content with, you know, the 5 standard most popular toys of stick, box, dirt, and for whatever reason the other 2 have jumped out of my head right at this moment. But it not only clutters the world for them and what they really want to get at, but then it makes it harder for you to be a good observer,
Right,
because there's so
right.
much stuff.
And it's hard, we get invested in the stuff that we offer. Like your description of the educator feeling dismayed that I brought all this cool stuff about boats and they're not even doing anything with it. And
Yeah.
and so they just keep jumping around. And so we can get really invested in the stuff that we offer, especially when we've really piled it in. So I encourage educators to think about what's the one offering that we could make in response to what we think is happening in this circumstance with children. What's the one thing we could offer with the lightest touch and with the least attachment? You know, offer it and then get curious about what children make of it or don't make of it, which then gives us more information about whether we're on the right track or not. We tend to grab on quickly to what we think children are playing about, and then here's this and that and this and that, and we plan activities weeks down the road and bring in lots and lots of props, and so all of that gets us that much more wedded to that being what the play's about. We just make one offering and then get curious, and we are shifting how we think about our role from being about we got to teach this content to we got to learn about what the children are thinking about, that we're the ones who are in the learner role.
So I think that word curiosity, between yesterday, your sessions with you yesterday and sessions with you today, having sort of really embracing a mindset of curiosity is really important, because instead of jumping the gun as to what might be happening with children, really always being curious and thinking further, and not just going with your first thought, keep thinking about it. I mean, I loved yesterday that team of teachers, really obviously bouncing the ideas off of each other to dig deeper. There was a quote that, wow, Carlina Rinaldi quote, wow. So the quote was, the potential of the child is stunted when the end point of their learning is formulated in advance. Like, I feel like hanging that up somewhere. And what I found really intriguing was then you postulated that you could just rephrase it with the potential of the teacher or instructor is stunted when the end point of their teaching is formulated in advance. How compelling is that? That's just sort of, one of those experiences of like, kind of thing.
Right.
And I thought that really spoke to everything we just talked about, right? Is, if you have that preconceived end goal.
Oh, right. We're not only filling the space and making it thick and hard to navigate for the children, but for ourselves as well. And we're minimizing the capacity that we have, which is vast, to be thinkers, to be curious, to not be teaching towards a particular learning goal, particular content knowledge, particular skill that we've already determined has merit and is what we should stay focused on. That when we're doing that, it's so easy to fall into a rut in our thinking. It's so easy to stay on the surface in our thinking, stay in really familiar places. And none of that is maximizing our potential. That our potential is vast, to think deeply and with curiosity and with resourcefulness, and to encounter ways of understanding a moment in children's lives that are different than how we think about it, and to engage those differences. We have this vast capacity, but when we stay in this place of following boxed curriculums, when we stay in a place of being locked into outcomes, then we're not calling on the best in ourselves. And we're certainly not doing the best that we can in service of the children and their flourishing. It's one reason I turn so often to that statement by Carlina Rinaldi, because I think it has depth on every level.
Yes.
Not the way we just can constrict and narrow and rigidify what otherwise could be a fluid experience of experimentation and investigation and bumping into things we don't know and hanging out in the places that we're confounded and unsure. That's that lively space. We think about with children, we hold this value for disequilibrium, for finding those moments when they they have to wrestle with two things that seem to be in contradiction. Well, this can't be true and this can be true. There's got to be some way to resolve this. And in the moments when learning sparks is when it's resolved with a new awareness, not by just choosing one and ignoring the other, but I'm going to wrestle my way into some new understanding. And that's what we can do as well as educators. We can seek out opportunities for disequilibrium rather than the comfort and equilibrium of staying on terrain that we know. Where do we find our own disequilibrium so that we can pop into those new understandings? That, to me, is what's so encouraging and exciting and energizing and sustaining, all that stuff. That's the kind of educator I want to be. That's the kind of life I want to live, is that lively place. Not where we're just kind of moving along on the same path that we've followed every year we've been an educator. Oh, here we go.
Right.
It's June, now I know what I should be doing, and it's different than what was in May, but the same as next June and the same as last June.
My team at the program that I work at, they always sort of dread when I go to conferences because they're like, oh,
she's coming back.
She's gonna have all these ideas. And
yeah.
Because change, I feel like for you and myself, I feel that's something we share, is that it's exciting, and sometimes having a disagreeable discourse can actually be really stimulating and a great, jumping off point for something different. And so they're always happy for me, but also very nervous, like, oh. So for me, the most recent thing, as I had shared yesterday, was this whole new thing in my mind on play work and what's that all about. So I have so much more to talk about, but I promised Ann that it would be brief. And I just, my mind, she's probably going to rest and relax, and I'm going to just keep processing. The last thing that I loved, of course, was which was brought up yesterday and today, actually two things. The phrase that to be a professional marveler, which I know that I'm going to say the last name wrong, so you can say it for us. So it's
Loris Malaguzzi, who is one of the founding educators in the schools in Reggio Emilia in Italy. I stumbled across that statement in a very long and provocative essay. That was a line that jumped forward to me, that our role as educators is to be professional marvelers. Yes, that comes from that place of being lively and awake and engaged and curious. I mean, marvel is different than being charmed or thinking that children are cute or thinking that they're learning something. And marveling it's a full body experience, it's a spirit experience, it's soulful, it calls on all of who we are and asks us to lean forward and try to understand more, to try to take in even more of this experience we're sharing with children in order to be changed by it. That's the other piece that I think we often erase out of the equation of what it means to be an educator, is that we expect the children to change or the families to change because of what we offer. But are we reminding ourselves to look for ways in which we're being changed? Are we willingly embracing those moments of disequilibrium, those moments of marvel, those moments of astonishment, those moments of it's the new idea just arrived in my life, in a way that allows us to be different because of our experiences? That, in the best of all worlds, we end every day with children a different person than we began that day. Then we know we're alive, and we know we're doing sustainable work, and if it's sustaining us in that way.
I feel like another thing we have in common is our love of words. Because for me, the word marvel, like my brain is really everything you just said, but to be, I feel like an element of the word marvel is to be in awe, and that is always such a privilege to be a guest while children are occupying each other and the materials, and you have to remember that it's a privilege that you're there witnessing it and bearing witness to their lives, and you have to embrace the opportunity to be present, yet observe. I can't articulate it because I'm still processing my knowledge of it.
I love your use of the word guest. I mean, that's really beautiful, that we're a guest in that moment. the children are the agents in the moments that we're sharing with them, and when we're watching them play, that's a guest, which is as an honor to be invited in as a guest, to be allowed in as a guest,
Exactly.
to be welcomed. It's an honor and has responsibilities.
And too often we think that they are our guest.
Yeah.
And it's the opposite. It is totally the opposite.
Yeah.
That's so important.
Yeah.
The last thing that you mentioned throughout yesterday and today, of course, was Tom Hunter's song, As Human Can Be. I have the DVD.
Oh, yay.
And I don't have
play
the
it.
song. I know, I need to basically, I've recorded the song while the TV has played.
Yeah,
and of course
yeah.
the quality isn't quite the
Yeah.
same because it was never put on a CD.
Right.
I had the opportunity to meet him, and then that opportunity wound up not happening because it was 6 weeks after he passed.
Yeah.
So all of his music, the lyrics just have such powerful messages. And so
Yeah.
I just wanted to share
Yeah.
that as well,
Yeah.
that I'll have to send you a conference I was at last month, a link to one of the participants who were there. She is not overly comfortable with her own singing, but she wanted to share the lyrics for a
Oh,
song with all of us.
wow.
So she sang, and it was
Oh,
so
that's
emotional,
beautiful.
and
That's
yeah, so I'll have to share the link,
Yeah.
because then
Yeah.
everyone loved the lyrics so much, we had to go in a
Right.
corner and record it and put it up so that people could then get the lyrics. So thank you
That's
so much.
gorgeous. Yeah.
And his
yeah.
biggest message, of course, was to
Wow.
keep it going, and you obviously
Yeah.
are keeping
Well,
it going.
Thank you
So,
for that. Thank
yeah.
you. And thank you, Tom, for the wisdom he's always has brought to us. Yeah. And that one of his last songs as he's dying is be as human as you can be.
Yeah, that's a responsibility too.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was an exciting weekend and an exciting conference, but a little bit weighty too. We have a lot of responsibility to really
Yeah.
think hard about what we learned. So thank you for everything here, and thank you for this as well.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ann.
Thanks so much. Thank you.